Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are really getting into the weeds with Chapter 7 of the material you sent over. It's called Building Your Own Support System as a Caregiver.
And that title says it all, really. This isn't just, nice to have advice. For anyone in the thick of caregiving, especially long-term, this chapter feels more like, well, essential reading for survival.
Absolutely. So our mission here today for you listening is to give you the ultimate synthesis. We know things can get overwhelming. Information overload is real, especially when you're already stretched thin.
Right. So we're boiling this chapter down. We're aiming for 5 key things.
Yeah.
The core foundation, what's the big idea?
Yeah.
Then the hook, what grabs you? The promise, what's the chapter offering? The single most important takeaway, the absolute must-remember point.
And finally, our take, a quick professional evaluation. Does it deliver? The goal is you walk away from this deep dive feeling informed, maybe a bit more empowered, and with a clear idea of what to do next.
Let's jump in.
Okay, let's do it, starting with that core foundation. If we strip everything else away from Chapter 7, what's the fundamental argument the authors are making right out of the gate?
The absolute bedrock of this chapter is a really profound shift in thinking. They establish early on that caregiving, especially when cognitive decline is involved, it's a marathon. We're talking years, sometimes decades.
Not a sprint, yeah.
Definitely not a sprint. And the central message, the thing they really hammer home, is that you are absolutely fundamentally not supposed to do this alone. It's not designed for one person to carry the whole load.
That feels so important to say up front because there's such a strong cultural sort of undertow pushing the other way, isn't there? Like, it's your duty, you should handle it. Asking for help is admitting defeat.
Exactly that. That narrative of just suck it up, handle your business, it's so deeply ingrained, especially in caregiving. It gets tied up with ideas about family duty, personal strength.
Right.
But the authors, Lee and Fiage, they tackle that head on. They explicitly state building a support system. That's not weakness. It's not you failing. It is, and this is their framing, an act of strength.
Strength, I like that framing. It reframes it completely.
It does. It's positioned as a strategic move, a calculated decision you have to make to ensure you can keep going and that the quality of care stays high over the long run. Think of it as an operational necessity, not, some kind of optional add-on.
Okay, so foundation. Caregiving must be shared, and sharing is strength. How do they hook the reader? What makes you sit up and say, okay, I really need to pay attention to this? Is it data? An anecdote?
It's data, and it's a gut punch. They hit you with a statistic that honestly should stop any caregiver dead in their tracks. It's about the reality of burnout.
Ah, the B word. Always looming.
Always. And the number they cite, drawing from sources like the Alzheimer's Association, is staggering. 70%. 70% of caregivers report experiencing burnout. And it's directly linked to feeling isolated or just not having enough support.
Wow. 70%. Okay, that's not just a risk factor. That's basically saying if you try to run this marathon solo, the odds are overwhelmingly stacked against you.
Precisely. Yeah. It reframes the whole thing. That number isn't just scary. It's the context you need to push past that internal resistance, the guilt about asking for help, trying to do it all alone. Statistically, you're setting yourself up for failure, or at least immense suffering.
So the implication is, building support isn't just about making life nicer. It's about preventing the caregiver from crashing and burning.
Exactly. It's self-preservation, but it's also quality assurance for the person being cared for. The primary function of that support system is to make sure the caregiver doesn't become the next crisis point. Because if you burn out, who steps in then? The whole system collapses.
Okay, but let me push back slightly here. If the burnout rate is that high, 70%, doesn't that kind of suggest that building the support system, the solution they're proposing, is actually incredibly hard to do in practice? Maybe it doesn't work as well as the theory suggests.
That's a fair challenge. And yes, it absolutely highlights the difficulty. But I think Lee and Fiage use that statistic not to say it's impossible, but to scream it's urgent. They use it to validate the struggle, to say, see, it's not just you. This is a systemic problem.
Okay.
And then, right after hitting you with that number, they pivot. They provide the counter-narrative, the proof of concept, and that comes through the story of Mark.
Ah, yes, Mark's story. Tell us about Mark. How does his experience illustrate this?
Mark is basically the archetype of the dedicated, initially solo caregiver. Highly organized guy, deeply committed, trying to juggle absolutely everything. Doctor's appointments, specialized meal prep, making the house safe, managing medications, all the logistics.
It's a classic scenario. And I'm guessing the source material confirms what anyone who's been there knows.
Yep. Exhaustion set in, fast, even for someone organized like Mark. The sheer volume, the relentlessness of it just became unsustainable. He was heading straight for that 70% statistic.
So what was his turning point? Did he find some magic bullet?
No magic bullet. And that's the key takeaway here. His breakthrough was actually quite simple, quite practical. It was targeted delegation, specific tasks.
Okay, specifics are good. What did he delegate?
He identified the routine, time-sucking tasks. The book mentions 2 specifically. 1, grocery shopping. Think about it. Planning, list-making, going, unpacking. It eats up hours every week. He delegated that to his brother.
Simple, repetitive, outsourceable.
Exactly. And 2, he asked a close friend, not for general help, but for a specific commitment, a weekly visit with his wife, just to chat, have tea, provide some different companionship.
Again, very specific and manageable for the friend. Not take over my life, but can you do this one defined thing?
Precisely. And the results, according to the chapter, were significant. For Mark, the relief was almost immediate. Just getting groceries off his plate freed up mental bandwidth and time. He felt re-energized.
And for his wife.
She benefited too. That weekly visit wasn't just a break for Mark. It brought variety into her routine, different conversation, a different energy. It lessened the intensity of Mark being her sole point of contact for everything.
So it wasn't just about lightening Mark's load, it helped her quality of life too.
Absolutely. And the book emphasizes this wasn't just a short-term fix. This early, strategic move to share the load gave the whole family years of better quality time together than they likely would have had if Mark had continued down the path to burnout. That's the ultimate payoff.
Okay, so we have the foundation sharing is strength. We have the hook, that alarming 70% burnout rate, counteracted by Mark's success with simple delegation. That sets us up nicely for the next piece, the promise. What does Chapter 7 actually promise the reader if they engage with this material? What's the payoff for reading on?
The promise is really layered. It works on both the internal emotional level and the external practical level. Internally, the big promise is a shift away from that constant state of worry, isolation, maybe even resentment.
Yeah, that feeling of being trapped.
Exactly. It promises to move you towards a place of feeling more in control, more proactive, more confident. It essentially offers a roadmap to share the burden effectively, which in turn transforms how you feel about the whole situation. Less victim, more strategic manager.
So it's not just a how-to guide, it's promising an emotional shift first. That seems crucial.
It is. Because the authors clearly understand that you could have the best checklist in the world, but if you're paralyzed by guilt or fear or pride, you won't use it. So the chapter promises to help you navigate those internal barriers.
How does it do that? Does it offer specific techniques?
It primarily does it through encouraging self-reflection. It poses some really direct, quite pointed questions to the reader. Questions designed to make you confront those silent obstacles.
Like what? What kind of questions are we talking about?
They get right to the heart of it. They basically ask you to inventory your own resistance. Questions like, what specifically is stopping me from asking for help? Is it pride, feeling like I should be able to handle it? Is it guilt, feeling like I'm burdening others? Is it fear, maybe fear of rejection or fear of seeming incompetent?
Naming those feelings, that's powerful in itself. It takes them out of the shadow.
Absolutely. By naming them, they become concrete issues you can address, rather than just this vague, overwhelming cloud of negative emotion. And the ultimate aim of this internal work, the promise, is to help you fundamentally reframe support.
Reframe it how?
To stop seeing it as a personal failure or, letting someone down, and instead to see building and using a support network as creating a shared journey, an interlocking system where everyone plays a part. It shifts the whole narrative.
Okay, so that's the internal promise, tackling the emotional blocks, reframing support. What about the external practical promise?
The external promise is the roadmap itself. Once you've hopefully started to tackle the internal resistance, the chapter promises clear, actionable steps on how to actually mobilize help. It doesn't just say get support, it breaks it down.
Into what categories?
It defines 4 distinct, essential layers of potential support that you need to activate. Your family members, your trusted friends, professional services, and broader community resources.
4 layers. Okay.
Yeah. And by breaking it down like that, it makes the potentially overwhelming task of finding help feel much more segmented, more manageable. It promises a structured approach, which leads us right into the nitty-gritty.
Which is section 3, dissecting the shared load. The action checklist. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? Moving beyond the why and the what into the specific how. We need to really dig into the strategies here.
Agreed. Because generic advice is useless when you're drowning. Lee and FH get that. The power of this section is in its specificity. So let's break down the playbook for each of those 4 layers, starting with the one that's often the most complicated, family.
Right. Family dynamics, history, expectations, perceived fairness. It can be a minefield. What's the specific action plan the chapter recommends to make engaging family productive, not, just another source of stress?
The first step they recommend is pretty much non-negotiable.
Yeah.
You need to hold a family meeting, whether that's in person or virtual if people are scattered. You have to get everyone in the same metaphorical room.
Okay, a meeting. But how do you stop it from descending into old arguments or blame games? What's the strategy for success?
This is where they introduce a really clever tactic. They advise using the symptom journal, which, importantly, should have been established in earlier chapters as an objective log of the loved one's condition and needs use that journal as the neutral anchor for the entire discussion.
Okay, hang on. Let's clarify the symptom journal for anyone who might have missed that part or is just tuning in. What is it exactly?
Good point. The symptom journal is essentially the objective record. It's
Right.
where you log, factually, the day-to-day realities, what behavioral changes are happening, what the specific medical needs, what difficulties are cropping up with daily tasks like dressing or eating, when are appointments scheduled. It's the data.
Got it. So it's not moms being difficult. It's the journal shows increased agitation between 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. on these dates.
Exactly. By grounding the conversation in that documented data, you shifted away from subjective complaints or emotional accusations, you never help out or dad seems fine to me, and towards operational problem solving. The focus becomes, okay, the journal clearly shows these 6 specific needs or challenges. How do we as a family collectively address them?
That immediately lowers the temperature. I can see that. It becomes about logistics, not just feelings. So once you have the data on the table, how do you go about assigning roles or tasks?
Systematically. The idea is to match tasks to people's strengths, their availability, maybe even their geographical location. For example, the sibling who lives far away but is super organized, maybe they take charge of managing the online communication hub, tracking bills, or researching resources.
While the local sibling handles the hands-on stuff.
Potentially, yes. Maybe they handle transportation to appointments or coordinate in-home help. The key is making the assignment specific and clear. Not just help more, but you are responsible for managing medication refills. Or your role is organizing weekend respite.
And accountability, how do you ensure things actually get done?
The authors stress setting clear expectations and, crucially, mandatory follow-up timelines. Schedule the next check-in meeting right then and there. It's not just assigning tasks into the void, it's creating a system with built-in accountability. The explicit goal is always to reduce the primary caregiver's isolation by making responsibility genuinely shared and clearly defined.
But what about the elephant in the room? What happens when you do hold the meeting, you present the journal, and a family member just digs in their heels? I'm too busy, I can't handle it, it's not that bad. How does the chapter advise dealing with that kind of resistance?
That's a really critical point. And honestly, while the chapter provides the strategy for the meeting, it perhaps doesn't go super deep into conflict resolution tactics for outright refusal. That might be more in Chapter 8 on managing emotions. However, the underlying approach here seems to be start small, be specific.
Make it harder to say no.
Kind of. If someone resists a larger role, you pivot back to the journal data. Okay, I understand you can't commit to X. Looking at these documented needs, which one specific smaller task could you take on, even just an hour a week? Make the ask concrete and minimal.
And if they still refuse, flat out.
Then, implicitly, the guidance is about self-preservation. You document that refusal mentally or literally. You acknowledge you can't force them, and then you redirect your energy towards leveraging the other layers of support, friends, professionals. Wasting energy on constant, unwinnable family battles directly feeds that 70% burnout statistic. Sometimes, acknowledging resistance and moving on is the strategic choice.
That's pragmatic, if maybe a bit disheartening for some. Okay, let's move outwards to the next circle. Trusted friends. This is a different dynamic, isn't it? Support comes from goodwill, not usually obligation.
Totally different dynamic. And the key challenge with friends often isn't unwillingness, it's vagueness. Friends often genuinely want to help, but they fall back on that classic, well-meaning, but ultimately unhelpful phrase, let me know if you need anything.
Right. Which puts the burden back on the overwhelmed caregiver to figure out what to ask for and then make the call.
Exactly. They suffer from what you might call help paralysis. They don't know what's actually needed or appropriate, so they offer a blank check that never gets cashed. The strategy Chapter 7 advocates is to proactively counter this.
How? By giving them specific jobs.
Yes, by identifying specific, manageable, low-pressure tasks. The emphasis is on making it easy for them to say yes and easy for them to succeed.
Can you give some concrete examples from the book or that fit the mold? What does a good ask for a friend look like?
Think light, time-bound, and maybe leveraging something they enjoy or are doing anyway instead of, can you watch mom all Saturday? Which is a huge ask. Try. Hey, would you be able to swing by around 3 p.m. on Friday for about 45 minutes? Mom loves hearing about your garden. Maybe you could just have a cup of tea with her.
Much less intimidating.
Definitely. Or, I know you pass the library every Tuesday. Would you mind grabbing mom's reserved books? Or even, could you just call mom for a 15-minute chat on Wednesday evenings? It breaks up her week. Tasks that provide companionship or handle a small errand without demanding heavy caregiving skills.
And the benefit is twofold again.
Absolutely. It provides genuine respite for the caregiver. Even 45 minutes can feel like a lifeline. And it combats social withdrawal for the loved one, which, as the book likely flags elsewhere, is a major issue in cognitive decline. It brings fresh energy and connection. It's a win-win from a small, specific ask.
Okay, family and friends covered. Now let's talk about the layer that often feels like the biggest hurdle, but is arguably the most critical for long-term sustainability, tapping into professional support.
Yes, this is often the game changer. This is where you access expertise and consistency that family and friends, however willing, usually can't provide. It's the firewall against hitting that 70% burnout wall.
What's the first step here? It can feel daunting, like where do you even begin?
The core action recommended is to actively seek referrals for trained professionals. The book specifically mentions social workers and, very importantly, geriatric care managers, often abbreviated as GCMs.
Geriatric care managers. Tell us more about what they do. Some listeners might not be familiar with that role.
Good point. A GCM is typically a licensed nurse or social worker who has specialized training in aging and elder care. Think of them as your caregiving consultant and coordinator. They can do a comprehensive assessment of a loved one's needs, medical, social, environmental.
So they see the whole picture.
Exactly. They see the whole picture, identify gaps, and then they can help you navigate the often bewildering system of services. They know local resources, they can coordinate different providers, manage paperwork, even mediate family discussions sometimes. They act as an objective, knowledgeable third party.
Essentially, they take on that overwhelming logistical coordinator role that the caregiver often struggles with.
Precisely. They bring expertise and objectivity, and crucially, they're often the gateway to accessing formal respite services.
Respite. Let's define that clearly. How is professional respite different from, say, having a friend visit for tea?
Respite services offer structured professional relief, usually for longer periods, or involving more skilled care than a friend can offer. It comes in various forms. There are adult day programs, for instance.
What happens there?
These are centers where the loved one can go during the day. They typically offer supervised activities, meals, social interactions, sometimes health monitoring or therapies. It gives the caregiver a significant block of time, maybe 6 to 8 hours to work, run errands, or, importantly, just rest and recharge, knowing their loved one is safe and engaged.
Okay, that's one option. What else falls under respite?
In-home aides are another major one. You can hire trained aides to come into the home for a set number of hours per week or day. They can assist with personal care bathing, dressing, provide companionship, ensure safety, manage medications, prepare meals. This provides relief within the home environment.
And these aides are trained for this.
Yes. Reputable agencies provide trained and vetted staff. Unlike relying on friends or family, these professionals are equipped to handle potentially challenging behaviors, mobility issues, or specific care needs consistently and reliably. Using professional respite isn't admitting defeat. It's a strategic decision to prevent caregiver collapse and ensure high-quality, sustainable care. It's often the linchpin of a successful long-term plan.
Okay, that makes sense. Family, friends, professionals. That brings us to the fourth layer the chapter outlines. The organizational piece. Building a communication hub. Why is this so important once you start bringing other people in?
Because the minute you have multiple players involved, family doing groceries, a friend visiting Tuesdays, an aide coming Thursdays, plus doctor appointments, things can get chaotic fast. Information gets lost, tasks get duplicated, or worse, dropped. Coordination becomes a major headache.
So you need a central command post.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
The chapter stresses the need for a single shared digital space where all information related to care can be logged and accessed by everyone involved, who needs access, of course.
What kind of tools are we talking about?
The sources suggest practical, readily available tools. Things like a shared online calendar, Google Calendar is a common example, or maybe a project management tool like Trello, used simply. Even a well-managed group chat like WhatsApp or Signal can work if it's structured.
And what goes in this hub? Just appointments.
Appointments are key, yes, but it's more than that. It should log assigned tasks, who's doing what, when, updates on the loved one's condition, had a good day today, or seemed confused this morning, notes from doctor visits, medication changes, contact information for providers, basically anything relevant to the care plan.
So it serves multiple functions.
Absolutely. It's about accountability. Everyone can see the plan and who's responsible for what. It promotes alignment. Everyone's working off the same information, reducing confusion and preventing things from falling through the cracks, like scheduling that crucial follow-up appointment mentioned in Chapter 5. And it provides documentation. It becomes a running record, reducing how often the primary caregiver has to repeat the same updates over and over.
It sounds like the central nervous system for the entire support network.
That's a great way to put it. It takes the administrative burden off the primary caregiver's shoulders, or at least distributes it, and keeps everyone synchronized. It's a simple tool, but strategically vital when you're managing a team effort.
Okay, wow. We've really unpacked that action checklist. We've covered the foundation sharing is strength, the hook, that's 70%, the promise, moving from guilt to confidence, and now the detailed how-to for mobilizing family, friends, professionals, and using a communication hub. So let's pull it all together. Section 4, the ultimate synthesis and takeaway. If someone listening could only remember one thing from this entire chapter, what should it be? What's the absolute core message?
This is crucial. After all the practical steps and strategies, the single most important takeaway, the ultimate synthesis, actually loops back to that internal shift we talked about. It's found almost hidden sometimes in the rationale behind the entire checklist. It is this: prioritizing your own self-care through accepting support.
Self-care. That word gets thrown around a lot. It can feel fluffy. Or like another thing to add to the to-do list when you're already overwhelmed. How does this chapter frame it differently, make it essential?
It frames it not as a luxury, not as something you earn after you've done everything else and collapsed. It frames rest and self-care as a fundamental operational requirement for being an effective caregiver. The synthesis is: you must allow others to step in, you must delegate, you must take breaks without guilt, because that rest is essential, not optional.
Essential, not optional. That's a powerful reframe.
It has to be. The chapter argues, using Mark's story as proof, that letting his brother do the groceries wasn't him failing. It was a calculated strategic move to preserve his own energy and effectiveness for the long haul. Taking that break, accepting that help, was the work.
So it's not just about feeling better, though that's important. How does this rest translate into being a better caregiver, strategically?
Well, think about it. Research and common sense tells us that a rested person makes better decisions. When you're navigating complex medical choices or sudden behavioral shifts, being clear-headed is vital.
True. Less prone to snap judgments when you're not exhausted.
Exactly. Rest also reduces emotional reactivity. You have more patience, you're less likely to get into conflict with your loved one or with other family members. Your memory and attention are better, meaning you're more likely to notice subtle changes, track medications accurately, communicate clearly with doctors.
So the core principle woven through the chapter is:
a supported caregiver is simply a more effective caregiver, period. By choosing to build that support system, by choosing to delegate, by choosing to rest, you are actively investing in the quality and sustainability of the care you provide, letting go of the guilt around self-care and seeing it as a strategic imperative that is the revolutionary takeaway. That's the mindset shift needed to survive and even thrive over the long term.
It really lands. Okay, we have the ultimate synthesis. Now for our final section, Section 5, the initial critique and evaluation. Stepping back a bit, looking at Chapter 7 professionally, does it succeed in what it sets out to do? And is its approach, its style, effective for the intended audience who are likely feeling pretty overwhelmed?
I'd say overwhelmingly, yes. The chapter definitely succeeds in its primary goal. It tackles the core problem, caregiver isolation and burnout, powerfully symbolized by that 70% statistic head-on. It validates the reader's likely feelings of being overwhelmed and alone.
And it doesn't just state the problem, it offers a solution.
Exactly. Its major strength is that it immediately pivots from validating the pain point to providing a highly structured, systematic, and very actionable checklist. It moves the reader from feeling helpless to feeling like, okay, here are concrete steps I can actually take. It translates abstract need into tangible actions.
And crucially, as we discussed, it addresses the emotional hurdles too, right?
Yes, and that's a significant strength compared to purely practical guides. By explicitly naming things like pride, guilt, and fear, it gives the reader permission and tools to confront those internal barriers that so often stall delegation efforts. It empowers them to start the process.
What about the writing style? Does it work for caregivers?
I think the style is very effective. It blends empathy with clear, practical advice. Using relatable stories, like Mark's, makes the advice feel grounded and achievable, not just theoretical. It avoids overly clinical language. The tone feels supportive, like a knowledgeable companion walking alongside you on this journey, rather than an expert talking down from on high.
Are there any areas where it could be stronger, or maybe a challenge it doesn't fully resolve within the chapter itself?
If there's a slight weakness, it might be, as we touched on, in providing really deep strategies for managing entrenched family conflict or resistance during that initial meeting. It outlines the ideal process well, but the reality can be messier.
Which is maybe unavoidable in one chapter.
Right. And I think the authors anticipate this because the chapter's placement within the larger book structure seems very intentional. There's a clear and logical link being set up.
You mean the connection forward, likely to Chapter 8 on managing stress and emotions?
Precisely. Chapter 7 focuses on building the external support structure. It lays the essential groundwork. But the authors implicitly recognize that even with the best plan, external factors like resistant family or the sheer emotional toll can still create significant stress. So Chapter 7 basically says, secure your perimeter first, build your support team. And then Chapter 8 likely follows with, okay, now that your external supports are hopefully stronger, here's how you manage the internal emotional landscape.
So building the support system is positioned as the necessary foundation for effective emotional resilience.
Exactly. You can't effectively manage internal stress if your external situation is chaotic and unsupported. The flow makes perfect sense. It shows a well-thought-out structure across the book, linking practical logistics to emotional well-being.
That's a really solid evaluation. So to quickly recap for everyone listening, we've hit the 5 key insights from Chapter 7. The foundation. Caregiving isn't meant to be solo. The hook. That stark 70% burnout rate from isolation. The promise. To guide you from guilt to proactive confidence via a clear roadmap. The action checklist. Specifics on engaging family, friends, professionals, and building a communication hub.
And the most important takeaway, rest isn't optional. Prioritizing your well-being through delegation and support is an essential strategy, an act of strength, crucial for effective, sustainable care.
Perfect. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, we always like to leave you with a final provocative thought, something to chew on, extending just beyond the chapter. We've established that building the support system, sharing the load, buys you back crucial time and energy you desperately need.
So the question to ask yourself now is this. If you truly commit to that core takeaway that rest is essential, not optional, and you successfully delegate even one small task starting today, freeing up maybe just an hour or two, how will you specifically invest that reclaimed time and energy?
Ooh, that's interesting. Not just I'll relax, but how will you invest it?
Right. Will you invest it purely in rest to recharge? Will you use it to reconnect with a part of your own life you've let slide? Or, thinking longer term, how might you use that space to proactively create some of those better, more meaningful memories, or start building that meaningful legacy that the book hints at later, perhaps in Chapter 10? Don't just reclaim the time. Decide consciously how it serves your resilience and the quality of the journey ahead.
What is the first, most manageable micro action you can take today to start reclaiming that energy? And what intentional purpose will you give it?
That first small step, that tiny delegation, is the seed for the entire system. It's how you begin to turn worry into real, tangible empowerment.
A powerful thought to end on. Take that step. Use this knowledge. Build your support. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.